Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be looking at lesson 8, which is how much in each group, part 1. Sorry, couldn't remember the name. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So how much in one batch? To make 5 batches of cookies, 10 cups of flour are required. How many cups of flour does each batch require? So right now it's telling us that if we make 5 batches of cookies, which is quite a bit, then it's going to take 10 cups of flour. But what happens if we only want to make one batch? Well, we're going to find out how much flour is required for that. So we can write equations and draw a diagram to represent the situation. They help us see that each batch requires 2 cups of flour. So 5 times something equals 10. 10 divided by 5 equals question mark. So here's our one batch. And so we can see that here. We can solve for it and find that it is the 2 cups of flour by taking 10 and dividing it by 5. Now, you really have to think about what the numbers represent. In this case, yes, we did take 10 and we divided it by 5. But don't just divide by the smaller number because that seems easier. That may not always be the case. It depends on what the situation is. So you really have to think about, what am I dividing? What do these numbers actually represent? So in this case, it represented we had 10 cups of flour that was making 5 batches, but we want to know what makes one batch. So we're taking all the flour and dividing it by the number of batches to find out how many cups are in just the one batch. So got to be super careful with that. All right, so for the next ones, we're going to take and write a multiplication equation and division equation and answer the question. So to make 4 batches of cupcakes, it takes 6 cups of flour. How many cups of flour are needed for one batch? So in all the questions we're doing today, they're all going to be about finding one batch. So finding the unit rate, finding what it takes to do one of something. And so this is telling us 4 batches of cupcakes, it takes 6 cups of flour. We want to know how much flour is needed for one batch. So division equation, take the 6 cups of flour and divide it by the 4 batches to find out how many cups of flour are needed for one batch. Or multiplication equation, 4 times something equals our 6. So now to figure out the solution, we're going to take 6 and divide it by 4. Now, how many times can 4 go into 6 evenly? Well, it can go in once with how much left over? 2, so 2 out of 4. And this reduces, we can reduce 2/4, and yes, you should reduce. So we end up with 1 1/2 cups of flour. So one batch takes 1 1/2 cups of flour. Now, if we take and do 1 1/2 plus 1 1/2 plus 1 1/2 plus 1 1/2, guess what? We're going to get to 6 cups of flour for the 4 batches. Okay? Now, for number 2, to make a half batch of rolls, it takes 5 1/4 cups of flour. Or 5/4, sorry, not 5 1/4, 5/4 cups of flour. How many cups of flour are needed for just one batch? So we're taking our half. We want to take and find out what 1 is. So in this case, it's not just going to be we're going to take those batches just like we did here, because this is the batch, this is the batch. So a half times something will equal our 5/4. Or 5/4, we take our flour, divide it by our batches to find out how much we need for one batch. So looking at this, to solve this, remember, we're going to use the same times flip. So remember that same times flip. It's going to be very, very helpful to you as you continue to go through math. So I'm going to write it down here. We're going to have 5/4, because the first one stays the same, remember, times, we flip the second one. So initially we have 1/2. We flip that. Now we have 2/1. So now 5 times 2 is 10. And 4 times 1 is 4. So we end up with 10 fourths, or how many times can 4 go into 10? 2. And how much is left over? 2, because 4 times 2 is 8. It takes 2 more to get to 10. So 2 and 1/2 cups of flour. So this time to make one batch, it takes 2.5 cups of flour. All right, and the last question here. 2 cups of flour make 2/3 a batch of bread. How many cups of flour make one batch? So we take our batch, 2/3 times something equals 2, because it's 2 cups of flour, or 2 divided by 2/3 equals question mark. Now, once again, we are dividing by a fraction, so we're going to use same times flip. Trust me, you're going to get tired of hearing me say that, but hopefully it'll get ground into your heads and you'll remember. So we keep the first fraction the same. Remember, anytime we have a whole number, it's always over 1. So 2 over 1 times, there's the same times, and then we flip this fraction here. So we had 2 over 3. We flip it. Now we have 3 over 2. 2 times 3 is 6, and 1 times 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 equals 3. So 3 cups of flour for the one batch. So remember, same times flip. It's going to be very, very helpful to you. And like I said, all of these are about finding what's needed for one batch, one single batch, compared to having these massive amounts of batches. Okay? All right. The next thing we're looking at, one container and one section of highway. So we have 3 diagrams, as you can see here. And then, we have these 3 diagrams. So here are 3 tape diagrams and 3 descriptions of situations that include questions. Match a diagram to each situation. Then use the diagram to help you answer the question. Next, write multiplication and division equations to represent the situation. So here we have this right here, the 15 cups, 1 container and a partial. 15 cups looks like 2 containers. 15 cups is a portion of 1 container. So all these different ones. Here's our first situation. Tyler poured 15 cups of water into 2 equal-sized bottles and filled each bottle. How much water was in each bottle? Well, which one of these did the 15 cups fill 2 equal-sized bottles? Diagram 2. So this is diagram 2. So if we take 15, well, let's write our multiplication equation. We're going to take 2, because we have 2 containers, times something equals our 15. Now our division equation, we're taking 15 and we're dividing it by 2 to get something. Now, if we take 15 and divide it by 2, what's half of 15? 7.5. So each one of those bottles has 7.5 cups of water in it. So there is our solution. So we've used diagram 2. Next question. Kieran poured 15 cups of water into equal-sized pitchers and filled 1.5 pitchers. How much water was in the full pitcher? Well, let's go back up here and look at our diagrams. Which one of these has us filling 1.5 containers or 1.5 pitchers? Well, that'd be diagram 1. We have 2 containers here, but this one's only a partial. So we have diagram 1. Now, for our multiplication equation, we're going to take the 1.5 pitchers times something equals our 15. Then here we have 15 divided by 1.5 equals something. Sorry, I should have used a question mark there since that's what we've been doing. Question mark. Okay, so to find the answer to this, we're going to use same times flip. So 15 over 1 times, what's 1 and 1/2 as an improper fraction? So 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, so 3 over 2. So times 2 over 3, because remember we're flipping the 3/2. So 15 times 2 equals 30. 1 times 3 equals 3. 30 divided by 3 equals 10. So there's 10 cups of water in the full pitcher. All right, and the last one. It takes 15 cups of water to fill 1/3 of a pail. How much water is needed to fill one pail? So looking back up here, the only one we haven't used is this one here, where the one container represents the whole thing, and 15 represents a portion of it. So diagram 3. Now, our multiplication equation, we're going to take that 1/3, multiply it by something, and get our 15. For the division equation, we're taking our 15, dividing it by 1/3 to get our amount for the full. So if we take 15, remember we're doing same times flip because we're dividing by a fraction, 15 over 1 times, we flip the 1/3, so we end up with 3 over 1. So 15 times 3 is 45. 1 times 1 is 1, so it's just 45 cups. So you might be wondering, how on earth is that possible that we went from having 15 to dividing and ending up with more? Anytime we divide by a fraction less than 1, it's going to make your answer a bigger number because we're taking some whole and dividing it by some little tiny fraction that makes up a portion of a whole. So it's going to make it so there's more in there. If we think about it with $1, $1 represents a whole, but if we divide it into quarters, we end up with 4 quarters. If we divide it into dimes, we have 10 dimes, so on and so forth. So that's how you could kind of think about it as you're working through this, okay? All right, so your key word for this lesson is diagram. Diagram is your key word for this lesson, okay? All right. So our next one, same thing. We've got the different diagrams, and then we're going to pick which one goes with the situation. Priya's class has adopted 2 equal sections of a highway to keep clean. The combined length is 3/4 of a mile. How long is each section? So 2 equal sections, total of 3/4. That'd be our diagram 1. So for our multiplication equation, 2 times something, that's a strange looking question mark, hang on, times something equals 3/4. So then our division equation, 3/4 divided by 2 equals question mark. So once again, same times flip, 3/4 times 1/2, because remember, 2 over 1, we flip it. 3 times 1 is 3, 4 times 2 is 8, so our answer is 3/8. So we're going to end up with fractions for some of these, fractions. All right, the next one. Lynn's class has also adopted some sections of highway to keep clean. If 1.5 sections are 3/4 of a mile long, how long is each section? So look for the one where we have 1.5. That would be our diagram 3. So our multiplication equation, we take the 1.5 sections, we multiply it by some amount, and that's going to get our 3/4 miles long. Division, we take our 3/4, we divide it by 1 and 1/2. Yes, we are dividing by something larger than what we have. That's going to equal our question mark. Remember, 1.5 is the same thing as 3 over 2. Once again, same times flip. So 2 over 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 3 is 12. 6 over 12 is the same thing as 1/2. So 1/2 is how long